Hey, Chewy in the lab. Gonna do try and make a couple videos today. First video will be a rundown of the bots post ComBots Cup 7 on what went right and what broke, because a lot of stuff broke. Okay, let's take a look at the 60-pound robot Little Kahuna, aka the Boner, or Dale's Boner. And this is pretty much, it's been fixed up enough where it's drivable after the last match with Guillotine. But it took a bunch of hits. Big hole there. Nice dent in the rim. Big hole down there. Big hole there. Big gouge in the aluminum sprocket, aluminum hub. Big gouge in the aluminum sprocket. Couple of new dings and chips on the blade. So now we'll pull off the cover, take a look inside, and under the hood is a tangled spaghetti of wires. The internals this time were sim motor and the Andymark Tough Box Nano, I think it is, which is a 12.3 to 1 reduction, run into the same 7.5 or 8 inch wheel. It topped out at something like 15 miles an hour and got up to speed pretty well. The speed controllers were BotBits cheap 85s. These are actually a pair I hacked myself, but they seem to do a fine job driving the sim motor on 6S LiPo. I was running the same Thor spin controller to run the two EV Warrior motors that are chained together, and there was another chain out to the front that got busted when Guillotine chopped the sprocket. In the first match against V for Victory, so on the first major hit against the wall, the blade cocked and created drag on the system while these things were bound up and sucking however much power they wanted. And that worked up until like minute and a half into the fight or so, when this was a replacement. There was like 18 gauge wire to the Thor. So when you try and flow like 3 horsepower through 18 gauge wire, obvious things happen. And what happened was the PWM line was right next to it, and that caught on fire, and that shorted, which then toasted the 5-volt regulators inside the BotBits controllers, and the robot was dead in the water. They won the war of attrition, and we were carted outside under the fire abduction cart, and told we were on fire. That was the first time that Boner got trucked outside. So then there was the second match against Dread. We went in without the chain. It was a pure pushy match. I don't remember why the weapon wasn't working, but he did win. But at the end of the match, the robot was on fire again. It got abducted out of the building again, and apparently hit with the CO2 fire extinguisher like multiple times. The electronics were toasted yet again. And so for the third and final match, we substituted in a Rage Bridge speed controller, one of the beta units from Charlie Guan, and it actually seemed to be an excellent match for these sim motors, because the sims are a little too hot right now, in my opinion, and the current limit on the controller was a good match, but like to play around with that a little more. But right now the wheel's a little bit wonky, little bit of run out there. In the final match against Guillotine, we had problems with the motor. This motor, the bearing is absolutely shot on it. The armature is cooked on this one, so the blade never really spun up. and he basically just had his way with us and put all the holes in, and when he finally tagged this wheel and this axle, the whole axle and wheel just came right off, cracked the bearing in there, tore the guts out through the face of the box, and so that was it. I'd like to do something about the gearboxes, although they were the right speed, weight, and price. They're a little bit fragile. I'm not sure what the best option for that is. Thinking about maybe going back to DeWalt's. As for the weapon, I'm not sure what the best thing to do for that either is. I have some unconventional ideas about bevel gears and drive shafts, or could just do the the conventional method. But what fun is that? But it's a possibility. So we'll see what happens with Boner. We'll see. And then we have the Middleweight. Community college, that's what it is. Decided to give us $2,000. I, again, had my own project to work on, so this was kind of out of my control. The person who was in charge of this basically created a bill of materials and a plans for a $4,000 robot, but was only given $2,000, so there were problems. It's very nicely designed and constructed. Now, let me lift off the top. You can see it's got a pair of the Airflow A28-400s with the Carlo gearbox. I need to come up with a good name for that. Again, I think it's a very clever design. Unfortunately, this robot never got together in time. It didn't run. So I have no in-box experience with these, so I'm going to hold off on any sort of critical review until this thing actually plays and we get to see how the gearboxes... I mean, it's never even run. I don't even know how the gearboxes sound when they power up. So there's a lot of unknowns with that there. Interesting project. The robot turned out beautiful. It looks very, very picturesque. It looks just like the CAD rendering. Unfortunately, it wasn't finished in time. I see some what I think are weaknesses. It would have been nice to test those out in the box, but now we have 6 months of cycle time to kind of fret and tinker with it in the dark, because a lot of things you don't really know until it's in the box. Again, I was kind of not part of this project. As an outsider, I kind of learned a lot about the strengths and the weaknesses of my teammates and how they work together. And so that in itself is quite valuable for the team, maybe not so much for the robots. So yeah, that's this is kind of a big unknown as well. Hopefully it'll be ready for Robo Games, and we'll be able to see what happens with it there. It'll be a much harder contest, because there'll be a lot of robots for Robo Games. It's kind of buried already, but here's his plan for Mortician. It feels like about 30 pounds of stainless. Oh, nice plow. Pretty. So these right here were my project for the ComBots Cup. About 6 weeks before the event, 7 weeks before the event, I was commissioned to build a pair of flame-throwing Kegbots, based generally around the design of Beer Bash, which was a middleweight, but it used a stainless steel half-barrel, whatever, 15.8 gallon container which once contained beer. I was given a few kegs, a few loose constraints, and built these robot bases around it. And the intention was that children would be chosen from the audience, and they could drive the red and the blue against each other, and that all would have good times. They are the same Anti-Mark Tough Box Nanos, Sim motors, bot bits, cheap 85s, Hobby King radio. The battery specified for this was a 12 volt, 18 amp hour sealed lead acid battery. It lives in this big dark pit under there, with a low center of gravity, 4-wheel drive, slow, easy to control so that a first-time driver like a kid could do it. The kegs themselves were mounted with big rubber shock mounts. The kegs here were sectioned open using a variety of techniques. A few mounting brackets were welded in. Because there's not a single flat surface on a keg, it makes it rather difficult to combine round thing with square thing. So had to make thing a little more square. Was always the flame system. It was kind of the last thing I was working on. Didn't really have a lot of time to get it really dialed in. It was dumping way too much gas, and it had real trouble with reliable ignition. So when it did catch, it was just a huge plume fireball, and it was over in a flash. So that's definitely something to work on. Got to play with the valves or the orifice or something. Make it a little more flame-proof. Blue robot here had not one but 2 flame outs during the event, and making a nice big fireball, and that was, I think, the only time the marshmallows actually got roasted. So congratulations on the roasty toasty marshmallows, and I can't believe you ate those. So anyway, also recently I was given the opportunity to talk to one of the builders of the original Beer Bash, and I found it very interesting that even though I had never spoken with him about this, a lot of the solutions and conclusions that he had come to were the very same that I had come to working on the project from this end. So I guess, as they say, all engineering roads lead to Rome, or something like that. So when all is said and done, it was an interesting event. We had kind of moderate success with the robots, at least one match. I think the Kegbots came off okay. We pulled a bunch of kids from the audience. I think they had a really great time driving. The boner had some flaws revealed, and hopefully we'll be back better next time. The middleweight Kaku, it's back there somewhere. The middleweight, it was a good team learning experience or something. So it was all well and good, and then after the event was over, this thing showed up. So somehow I'm in possession of Vlad 2. This is what it looks like. This is what it looks like without the shell on. Well, the shell's like sitting right there. But somehow I ended up with Vlad 2, and now have to make it work and, you know, do better. This is quite a beast of a robot. When it first showed up, and I managed to put some batteries in this and just run it around here in the shop, I could tell within about 10 or 20 seconds the Achilles heel for this robot has been and always will be the batteries. It wants amps like crazy. I'm hoping 60 cells will be enough. I'm afraid 80 cells is what it really wants. So we're giving Last Rites and his 96 cells a run for its money. But the plan is to get this thing running for robo games. So yeah, we'll see what happens with the Vlad 2.